As we continue to read the Gospel of Mark, we hear that the 12 apostles have returned from the mission that Jesus sent them on and reported back to him all that had happened. None of the Gospels specifically tell us the content of this report, but from various references it is plain they had made quite an impression, preaching in the towns and villages, as well as healing sick people. By the end of this, they were plainly exhausted. I can easily imagine this is emotional as well as physical. Between their departure and return, the death of John the Baptist has been reported, killed on the orders of King Herod, and Jesus was well aware of the implications of this for him. The need has arisen to recharge themselves for the next phase of the mission. They set off to find a place where they could be alone for a while, needing some time to reflect on what has happened, just as much as they could use some rest. The need for such a retreat has become an essential part of almost all ministries, and we see this need recur many times during Jesus' life on earth, sometimes alone and sometimes accompanied by his closest circle of followers. This establishes a pattern that exists in most Christian ministries even today, and in other faiths as well. The necessity for this is so clearly perceived in our own Catholic Church as a requirement for all those informally in ministry to go on retreat at least yearly, and highly recommended for others. The disciples were just beginning to learn how taking time out to reflect on what they had done could deepen their understanding of what Jesus was sharing with them. Time taken in spiritual reflection can allow the meaning to become clearer and take root, ready to share it with others. On this occasion, however, it was not to be like that. The crowds followed them, denying them the space for their retreat, and Jesus had no choice but to devote more of his time to them, perhaps allowing the disciples a little time for reflection and meditation. Jesus' reaction to the crowd of people who sought him out is an interesting one, a quite famous label of sheep without a shepherd. The image of sheep is one that appears frequently in the Old Testament and is picked up by Jesus in several discourses and parables. The significance of the image is both one of people in need of leadership and also of those who have yet to find their place in the community, either in a shepherd or seeking to belong to the flock, or even both. Jesus can provide for both needs, himself being the shepherd who can lead us to salvation and creating the flock that is the community of love required for all Christians. The passage from Mark also suggests that his leadership consisted, at least in part, of dispelling the ignorance of the crowd as he set himself to teach them at some length. He feeds their need for knowledge of the love of God and gives them the understanding to build the community that he desired for them. The lack of or poor performance of pastors as shepherds is not a new theme. Ezekiel, long before Jesus, had declared, "Woe to the shepherds of Israel, who feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock?" Jesus, in his turn, would condemn the religious leaders of Israel, who used their knowledge and power not for the benefit of the people, but rather to feather their own nests and maintain their own exalted position. Those who should have been the shepherds protecting the flock were rather a burden borne by them. We can only speculate what either Jesus or Ezekiel would make of the shepherds of our modern world, when the vast majority of people, in the Western world at least, could easily be described as sheep without shepherds, although most of them would not consider themselves as such and could be quite offended by the suggestion. But before we consider any criticism of our leadership, religious or political, we should first ask ourselves whether we should be classed as sheep or shepherds. This question needs to be answered by every Christian, not just bishops, priests, deacons, religious, and those few lay people clearly associated with the leadership of the church at some level. We need to recall that Jesus taught the sheep without shepherds because he felt sorry for them. But what happened to the knowledge that he shared with them? This knowledge can be found in the Gospels and other scripture, to which we all have access, and varying levels of knowledge and understanding. But we are perhaps too reluctant to share this with those who desperately need it. When we fail to pass on our knowledge of Christ, we are failing to meet the need for shepherds by the massive numbers of people whose lives could be changed forever by the knowledge of Christ. Our world today is absolutely teeming with sheep without shepherds. So much so that the leadership of the church alone would simply not be enough to reach them all. But with all of us who call ourselves Christians helping, this task can be made much more reasonable. We can reach so many more. We could become, if you like, a corporate shepherd for the world. When you think about it, the number of people that Jesus directly spoke to was, in terms of worldwide population, relatively tiny, numbered in thousands only. It was always his plan that his disciples would first of all spread the message themselves, then create the network of communities that would spread it further. Even the gospel was put into writing and eventually into print. It would still need the enthusiasm and witness of growing numbers of people to spread it to all corners of the world. Nothing has really changed. The good news of Jesus has reached all the world, but somehow a void has developed in the centre, and it can only be filled by the same process. Christians reaching out to share the teaching of Christ, so that this void can be filled in again. Jesus is still the Good Shepherd, the one and only who can lead the world to salvation. He needs us to help cope with the sheer logistics involved in spreading the word to the huge population of the world today. And so today we must each ask ourselves a question. Are you a sheep or a shepherd? In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.